welcome to episode 9 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. How are you today, Brian?
I'm all right. How are things going in COVID-19 world for you?
I'm getting sick of it. I'm sick of this shit.
Yeah.
I want to go grocery shopping without the fear of death.
I know.
I want to walk on the streets. I don't know what I want to do. I'm sick of it. I got family here all the time. They never leave.
Yeah, that must be weird for you, isn't it?
It is. I'm used to privacy, as we say in England. And we do all the time say that. So, I grew up in a household where I was very happy when my parents were away.
Yeah.
And I could finally unclench and relax. So I have this built-in hardwired desire to be occasionally alone. Not Unabomber alone, but just occasionally alone. How about you? How are you managing? What are you doing for fun?
Yeah, I mean, for fun. I don't know, watching movies, going for walks. I mean, it's still okay to get out and have a walk as long as there's nobody around, right? As long as you don't get too close.
You've been taking the whole family and spaced out, or what do you do?
It just depends. Sometimes everyone walks the dog. Sometimes I go by myself. So this morning, I like to walk around the neighborhood, and but I like to take a different route every day. But there's only so many routes around the house, so I was starting to get real bored with this.
Gotcha.
So today I took the unusual step of driving 2 minutes and then parking the car and then walking around that neighborhood.
Wow. 2 minutes.
Yeah, just a short little drive. And I think, I took the Tesla, of course, the electric car. I don't think I would have done that in a gas car. It would have felt needlessly wasteful. I mean, I guess it's still kind of wasteful in an electric car, but felt like the right thing to do.
See, if I drove 2 minutes, I would get into the projects and then I would risk death.
Yeah, okay.
From a different means, yeah. There's bad parts of the neighborhood and then there's, the better parts. So we stick to the better parts.
Yeah.
There was a triple homicide in the bad part. A triple homicide.
What?
Regina's only triple homicide.
Like recently?
Yes, shortly after we bought the house, 8 years ago.
Oh, boy.
And it was a child involved.
That's
not
horrible.
to be dark. Not to be dark.
This podcast is taking a horrible turn.
They were from one of those countries where there was a revenge killing and somebody came over from Myanmar somewhere and killed the whole family and they were never caught. And we live in fear every day.
Oh my.
Yeah. That was a nice introduction to the neighborhood.
Speaking of death, I mean, I still...
Go on.
I'm still kind of an optimist. I feel like we're still not doing too badly here. So this, I think, our 4th episode here in the midst of the pandemic.
Social distancing.
And, the first time we talked about it, there was 8 or 9 cases in the province. We're up to about 250 now, but there's only 4 or 5 in hospital. So I think we're still doing okay here.
Okay, here's my thought. Boris Johnson's in the hospital. On the verge of being intubated and going on to a breathing tube, which is a bad outcome if you get that far.
And he's exactly my age, but go ahead.
Yes, and he's if you get on a ventilator, I think you have almost a better than 50% chance of dying if you get that far.
Yeah.
It's really bad outcome. And I feel like I was watching him ride a bike the other day when they were showing footage. I think he's in slightly better shape than I am.
Oh, really?
Roughly the same age. So I feel like, I get this. I'm going down. You're doing the show alone. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll have to start auditioning now for a replacement for me.
Yeah, but like I say, I'm an optimist. We're doing okay here, aren't we?
We are. In Saskatchewan, there's 3-4 new cases a day, 8 cases a day. And it's been steady like that for a long time. I think that one day there was 22 cases, but that might have, the travel's been locked down. I feel like we've planked the curve. And in Regina, we have 2 major cities here. Saskatoon has twice, almost 3 times the amount of cases we do. Having said that, some jackass 23-year-old went walking around after being tested positive, went through the community, and they won't say where, but I assume it's in my neighborhood.
But there's now a law against that. So this person was caught and arrested or given a fine. Yeah. So it felt good that something was being done about it.
Well, fuck yeah. I guess that's why it existed. But, I didn't think anyone who tested positive would be stupid enough to walk around the community. People are going to die.
Well, maybe they tested positive after they were walking around. That part wasn't clear.
No, they tested positive before. That's a fact that they added on in the police release yesterday.
Oh, my.
After the initial release is that they tested positive on this date and were charged on this date for walking around.
Wow.
So that's horrible. And, my son's saying, I can't ref. His main income is reffing soccer, and he wants to go get a job. And all jobs now are high risk.
Yeah.
Except for podcasting.
Well, maybe he can apply for some of that, government relief to replace his referee income.
He's thinking about it. He's mad that the video game purchases are going to be down this year, so it's going to be rough. It's gloom and doom. And, I have to be honest, I think that I've been spurred on to buy an electric bike as a COVID Band-Aid, as a way to distract and give me some optimism and something to do, something to look forward to with spring upon us, although winter comes back, as we discussed last week. It's definitely here today. So yes, I did get my electric bike moments after we concluded our podcast last week. Moments it came. My daughter was camped out at the front door, waiting for it, thankfully, and it came in a big box. We all hauled it into the house and opened it up, and it was as in other unboxings I saw on the internet, and I promptly dropped the $500 battery onto the floor.
Oh,
and it broke slightly.
Oh no,
the casing of it broke, and that is just my luck.
Yeah.
You see, I started undoing it. It comes very nicely wrapped and very nicely like little ribbons on things that you untie bows of, so you can it's easy to undo. And I was struggling with it, and my wife was videotaping at the time. So, instead of helping, but yes, we have the I crazy glued it all back together, and it's barely noticeable.
So does she have footage of you dropping the battery?
I think so, yes. Well, I don't want to see it, though.
I'd like to see that.
Of course you would. Of course you would. That'll be in my Amazon review, which I've been writing up.
This sounds a lot like, the home edition of The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, where his wife is operating the camera and doing the show in his house.
Yeah, well, I don't... It's not that exciting. Man drops battery. Man spends lots of money on bike and practically trashes half of that value right there because the battery is very expensive. So we were talking last week about how you were disappointed about you can't just go to a bike store and buy a bike that you can rely on.
Yeah.
And this is the first bike I bought in a box that came from somewhere else. I bought two other bikes when I was an adult. One was on my Bay credit card for the Hudson Bay Company when I was 20. I defaulted on that credit card, and but it was a good bike until it was stolen or trashed. It was a 10-speed. And the other bike was in the 90s. It was a hybrid bike. So I still have it, and I still like it. But this is the first time I got one out of the box. And I was very surprised that it was already, except for the fork and the pedals, it was basically all together and ready to go and tuned. I mean, if you go to, say, Canadian Tire or Walmart or any store that's not a bike shop, you generally get bikes that are not put together properly almost all the time. And this one was meticulously put together, as good as a bike shop. And the derailleur, all that, it works effortlessly and perfectly. So I was quite impressed. This is not your normal discount e-bike company, NCM, which is a German company that's been passionate about e-bikes, and their brochures are in English, and they're well explained and have many pictures, and they're passionate about bikes just like a real bike company.
So was it assembled in Germany then, or?
No, it's assembled in Seattle because they've expanded to Seattle and New Zealand, of all places. So sort of Germany covers the European market, and New Zealand covers the down south, and Seattle covers North America. So, and as I said also that it had no tax on it. So it was essentially about $980. And, it was a 1080 was the list price, but it had no tax. So it was the equivalent of a $980 bike. Now, if you look at $980 bikes from Walmart, which are all well reviewed, they're pieces of crap in comparison. So I assess this as being a good value because it has good components on it. It has bike shop level components on it. Now, the weak spot, Brian, is, can you guess? It's the forks.
Oh, of course. It's always the forks.
It's always the forks are an expensive item. And so any entry level bike, and I checked this out, even if you buy a bike of the equivalent price that's not electric, but just a normal bike, they still have that same level of components on them. And some people compare these Suntour forks as pogo sticks. And I was worried because they don't have a lockout on them. So you can lock them from not bouncing, which is kind of nice because most of the time you don't need them to bounce and they sort of take away your energy. Plus, I'm incredibly fat, so I was worried about pushing down on it. But they do have a nice preload adjustment, so you can click it, and adjust it for your weight. And they do work. I just don't think they'll last very long. And so I'm looking at upgrades for that, and these forks probably are like a $75 retail fork. And most forks that are of any decent worth are at least $225. Most of them would be about $300. So yeah, I don't know. I've used them though, and I've used the bike, and it's quite incredible.
Yeah, so it's just like a bike but faster, right?
It's a bike, but the only drawback is that of course it's heavy because the motor and the wheel, which is a hub motor, and the battery and the controller all add, I don't know, 10 pounds of weight or so, 12 pounds of weight. And the bike isn't the lightest bike. Like the fork itself is going to be a couple of extra pounds more than it needs to be just because of the price point.
Yep.
So when you get on it and you start pedaling, a half second after you start pedaling, it kicks in. And it's the earliest kind of motor. It's got gears in it. So there's brushless hub motors, which don't have gears, but just churn, and they're known to be quieter. However, this one has a really good reputation, and it's actually made by this company in a Chinese factory, which they have their own factory in China. It's not bought from other people. It's made by them in China, which is nice because they have total control of everything. And it has gears in it, which gives you a bit more torque, but it's less efficient at a high speed. So, and they're also known to be noisy. However, this one is known to be quiet, and it is quiet. It is quite quiet. Like the tire noise on the pavement or gravel or whatever is going to be louder than the motor most of the time. So I'm quite impressed by that. So you start pedaling, and I've been using, it's got different levels of assist, 1 through 6. And 0 through 6, actually, you can turn it off. But if you put it on the 6, which I have, because I've only had short rides, I've only had about 15, 20-minute rides because it's so bloody cold. And the day I went out last week, the day we recorded our show, it was a minus 25 wind chill. And I've never cycled in that kind of weather, and it was painful. And I was dressed for it, but it was ridiculous. And I stuck to within a block of my house because I was worried that I would get too cold and literally get frostbite by the time I got home. So,
well, of course, you're just increasing the wind chill by,
very
going
much so.
quickly down the street.
Yes, and that brings me to my next point. There was some discussion on the internet that you could unlock this bike. It's supposed to be locked to 25 kilometers an hour, which is a class 2, which is kind of like, I don't know, some people say it's 28 kilometers an hour. The website said it was 25. So 28 is kind of like the peak of a class 2 bike. And they said you could unlock it to a class 3, which would go up into the 45 kilometers an hour, which is really fast. Haven't been able to do that successfully yet, and don't think that I will be, but 30 kilometers is plenty fast. Like, I used to consider 20 kilometers an hour fast when I had speedometers and little bike computers on my bike. 30 kilometers, and this is a regular speed for me no matter what I'm doing. If I'm going through a slushy gravel path around the park here, up and down hills, I'm maintaining 30 kilometers an hour like I'm fit or something.
It's all pedal assist, or is there a throttle as well?
There is a throttle, and I don't think there's supposed to be a throttle on a Class 2 bike, but there is a little thumb throttle, and it's very narrow, and it goes on your right-hand side. And I find it very useful because as I'm, in winter gear and incredibly overweight, trying to stretch my foot over the bike and get on and gracefully take off while the neighbors watch, I'm able to use that throttle to start me off. And it just looks more graceful. So I'm appreciative of it for that. It's also handy because it gives you full power. It's full power or nothing with the throttle. So if you are on a lower assist mode and you encounter a hill, you can just kick in the throttle temporarily to get up that hill.
Yeah.
And of course, the other reason is for gliding. If you just want to rest your taint, if your taint is getting sore, and you want to just sort of give it a rest or readjust yourself on the seat, which I'm still breaking in the old underside to leatherize it for the summer cycling season. Even though I do have cycling shorts, it doesn't help an incredible amount due to the factors involved. So yeah, that's it's cool. And here's something that I think is the most important point about this. I'm using this as a leisure bike for fitness, and I come back feeling, even though I'm using the full assist of this sucker, I come back with sore legs and sore arms and like a sore core, because my core hasn't been getting any attention. And I just, I feel like I'm getting a workout. Like no matter how much of an assist you use on it, you're still getting that workout. And here's the thing though, Brian, the important thing is that there is no day that I will say, well, I'm tired, I'm stiff, I'm sore, it's cold, it's miserable, it's windy. I'm still going to go out because, and I think that's one of the best things about this is that it'll always get you out there, and you think, well, I'll just go for a little spin, and then it ends up being fun, and you end up going further. And I highly recommend this bike, which I'll put. It has gone up in price, but I have, I will put a link to it somewhere.
So, and the brand is NCM, and so the brand in general, it sounds like you can recommend that they make decent stuff at a decent price.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, I looked. They do have some folding electric bikes, which is something that I'm looking at. Doesn't seem to be a whole lot of options for getting them in Canada. No. I could find a dealer for the other bikes, but the folding ones, harder to get in Canada. So I'm sure it could be done somehow, but they have a few folding bikes.
Yeah, I think you're wrong on this, the folding bike idea. I know you're shying away from carrying a bike on a bike rack, and that's what this comes down to.
Yeah.
But they're twice as expensive.
Yeah.
And, you could buy 2 bikes with that money, and you could put one at the cottage and just leave it there.
Yeah.
Bring the battery home and keep it conditioned.
It's true. I don't know. I'll take that under advisement.
Please. You could buy 2 of the same bike, and you have 2 batteries for it. So think of the power you could have. You could have low-powered bikes and have 2 batteries for it. This bike is almost 500 amp hours at 36 volts. And that's compared to like the entry-level bike at Walmart for $800 is about 768 amp hours. No, sorry. It's about 700. This is about 2/3 more amp hours. And some people say you can go, well, some of the literature says you can go 100 kilometers on a flat surface.
Right.
But I don't know about that. I do think you can do a lot of cycling on it, though, like even 3 hours using a lot of assist. It seems to be a big battery and with lots of extra juice.
I want to just complain a second about the Switch Bike Company. This was a e-bike conversion kit I was thinking of buying. It's Switch with a Y.
Yeah, it's a little bag that fits on your handlebars, like a handlebar bag with the battery and the controller and the display all in one.
Yeah, and it seems really good, and it's gotten good reviews. I'm just irritated with the way that they're selling it. And again, I think, the best way to buy a bike is to go to your local reputable bike shop. But as we've discussed before, it's, currently for electric bikes, it's just crazy expensive. So something like this Switch kit was something that I was looking at, probably $800 or $900 Canadian. But they're just doing it in a weird way. Like it's always like an Indiegogo campaign or a Kickstarter or something. And so they had this deadline about a week ago. It's like, oh, you got to get your orders in to get the 50% off of the thing. And I was like, well, it's like they're trying to trick you into ordering it, by putting this sort of false time deadline. And sure enough, the deadline passed a week ago and the price hasn't changed. Like orders are momentarily closed. They're doing a sort of a separate Kickstarter, but I'm just irritated that they're not just opening up a store and selling it. It's this special 50% off price, but they've never offered it for any other price than that. So it's a false sale price.
And you have to wait for those suckers too, right? I mean,
you put in your order and then it's like a 10, 12 week wait. So I should have, if I wanted it, put in an order 6 months ago. But again, I was irritated with how they were selling it. And I just felt like they were trying to trick me into these false deadlines and everything. Get the special price, order now. And so I just didn't do it.
Wow. Okay. So that's, I got mine in six days on a truck from Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm still tempted by conversion kits like that. What you're talking about is a conversion kit because you have to change the wheel to their wheel, and it has a built-in motor, and you have to run the wires, make sure the wires don't ever get broken or fall off. I'm worried about that in transportation. I might take some extra steps on that. I actually was talking to a guy on YouTube who said, the ties the zip ties that hold the wires on are inadequate, and you should improve that. So I've got that advice.
Okay.
And I think I'm going to be very happy with this. The only thing is it does feel, it's heavy when you're riding, and that seems a little bit unusual. I wish they had a bike that could make you feel like Superman and make you feel like you're riding the same bike. That would be cool too. But it is just, I don't know how it's going to work with, like my daughter rode it. She's 12 years old. She was zipping up and down the street without a helmet, which I regret now, but it's hard to wear a helmet and, 10 toques on top too. So yeah, it's lots of fun.
And you said that there was instructions on the internet to sort of like hack it to get more power?
Yeah, basically you hold the plus and minus key on the display, and it's got a nice display too. Like it's like a big bike computer. And there's a USB port on it too. So if you wanted to plug in a USB light, you could have one that is incredibly bright or charge your phone. You could even use it as a, as a solar power pack or some sort if you wanted to in your camper, which I'm thinking about. Charge it up with solar and then use it to charge phones or something. So yeah, you can do that. Like even after the bike dies, the battery will charge whatever you want on the USB port for at least 2 hours, the manual says. So I don't know, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, the weather is slowly improving, so I'm sure you'll get some proper riding.
I look forward to you trying it out, but it's going to be pandemic for God knows how long.
Yeah, who knows? What are you going to do?
One sunny day, perhaps I'll write it down there as the virus descends, and you can take it for a spin.
Yeah, so this is my other story about entertaining myself during the pandemic, but we went for just a drive on the weekend. So, it was Saturday and we were like, okay, well, we're getting bored here in the house. What are we going to do? So we hopped in the Tesla and we decided to just go for a drive. And so we opened up the navigation and we thought, we'll drive to a small town. There's lots of really small prairie towns around here. So just for something to do, we picked a town on the map.
People are going to stare at you when you go to a small town because that's just what they do. But during a pandemic, they're going to think, well, we don't like strangers even more now, like, and this fancy, weird car.
There was this one guy with a really sort of weird looking house with, weird looking wrought iron. And we were going to take a picture of it. And of course, he walked out of his house at that exact moment. But anyway, we picked a town called Ricetown, which is about a 25-minute drive south of the city.
Okay, but did you talk to this guy?
No, the guy with the... No, not at all.
Did you run away?
We ran away.
Did he get his shotgun cocked? What was he doing?
If we had hung around, I think the shotgun would have come out.
Okay.
But anyway, so we just picked a small town. We picked this town of Ricetown, and meant, driving south of the city for about 5 minutes on the main highway. And then you take like a weird secondary highway, like basically a paved goat path the rest of the way. So that's like another 20-minute drive to Royston, and then we hung around and then we drove back again. So anyway, the point of the story is we spent about 40 minutes on this country highway with barely any people around. We only saw 2 or 3 cars the whole time. And one of the other cars we saw was a Tesla Model 3.
Are you kidding me?
No. And,
really?
This is not California. There's not a lot of Teslas around here. So the chances
the
of
other guys
this...
think of the same thing. What the hell?
Yeah, well, and he was driving towards us on the highway, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that, and then he just gave us a little wave as he drove by. And and also, given how small this, electric vehicle community is here in Saskatchewan, I thought, you know what, there's a chance he's even listening to this podcast, whoever it is.
Yeah, well, the electric vehicle community is not listening to this.
Oh, they're not?
No.
Oh.
No, they've got better things to do. They're out driving their Teslas around.
Yeah, well, anyway, if the driver of the blue Tesla Model 3 who lives near Royston is listening, give us a shout.
Or likes to drive to Royston. Has the same idea as you.
Maybe it was the same idea, yeah.
You haven't been able to supercharge yet, have you? I mean, not well. Not with a properly drained battery.
Did it that one time in Moose Jaw as a test, yeah.
You need to drain that battery, Brian. And
I guess so. I mean, we've got nowhere to go. I mean, there's, the car has been sitting mostly undriven in the driveway lately.
Really? So where do you put your other cars on the street?
We've got one on the street and then 2 in the driveway is what we've been doing.
Okay, which brings us to our voicemail caller of the week. I'm very happy that someone left us a voicemail. And you can too at speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. Leave us a voicemail simply by pressing a button on your computer. You can listen to it again. And, if you're not happy with it, you can give up on the whole idea. Or you can record at home if you're a podcaster and send us a voice file to cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. I don't care. We don't care, but we love feedback. We love text feedback even. Mm-hmm. Let's get to the call.
Hello, this is Spiro in Vancouver. I think Brian should keep both of his fossil cars along with his Model 3 and buy another car. So that way he would have 4 cars, one for each person in his household. Might I suggest a 2010 Volkswagen Jetta diesel? You're welcome.
All right. So
is he making fun of you, Brian?
I know. I suspect he's
sell you a car.
I suspect he's entirely serious. 2010 Jetta diesel is that is that a Dieselgate model?
Probably trying to unload it on you.
Got the defeat mode to beat the emissions tests. Well, that's of course, like having 4 cars in a household is actually not that crazy for where we live. It's a very car culture kind of place.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. I mean, you will go for a walk in our neighborhood. Everybody's home now, and you can see all their vehicles, and they are probably like we have a mature neighborhood here with a lot of teenagers. So there's our college students, and the kids are still living at home. There's like 6 cars in the driveway, big ones usually.
When I was a kid, my dad ran his business out of the house, like his office was in the basement. And so he had cars for his business. But yeah, at one time we had 6 cars in the house I grew up in.
Really?
Yep. They weren't always all there. Some of them might be out working or doing jobs or whatever. But yeah, 6 cars.
Oh, that's crazy. And the thing that bugs me is that they're all large cars in our neighborhood. Like they're all like, well, we can't have Tommy driving an SUV or anything less than an SUV because he gets stuck in the snow or hit by somebody driving a bigger truck.
No, and of course, when I was a kid, like these 6 cars were all gigantic cars with big V8 engines. And I remember my dad used to go and start them up in the winter, like on those days when it's -40. He would, wake up at 4 a.m. and just go out and start all the cars and leave them running for an hour to make sure that they were warm for the day.
The planet is warmed.
Exactly. It's my dad. It's his fault.
The household is responsible for 0.25 degrees of that.
Yeah.
I was hard pressed to find a clean energy story that was positive this week. In fact, I was actually going to compile a list of all the negative stories because there's so many negative stories. Like Rivian has pushed back their production of their pickup truck to next year now, which is depressing because everyone was highly anticipating this. It was expensive, but it was a nice truck.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been the first, probably still will be the first pickup truck on the market that's an EV, but now we have to wait longer because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the American government pushing back regulations, using this as an excuse to deregulate the oil industry and basically saying, well, we're in a crisis, so no environment regulations should, And the funny thing is that people who live, they actually have studies on this, that people who live in places with pollution, more pollution, have worse outcomes with coronavirus. So this is why you have this is when they say pollution kills.
Mm-hmm.
This is it, is when you have a lung problem and statistically there'll be more people dying from it than if your air was clean.
It's true. If you live in a polluted place, your lungs are already slightly compromised.
Yeah, which is it's depressing. It's depressing. Tesla shut down. They're making ventilators now. They put out a video. They're trying to make ventilators in the car factory. I know they're retooling. They were just starting to put out the Model Y SUV, which, what's his name is tearing down now. The automotive consultant Sandy Munro and Associates. Yep. You can see videos every few hours of him tearing down the Model Y. Have you watched any of that?
I watched a little bit. Yeah, it's interesting.
2020, and we're not where I hoped we would be with the electric car market. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think, here's my theory about the deregulation in the US is that like the car companies, they want as much flexibility as possible, right? Like, they know it's going to be tough to get through the next 10 years. They still have all these factories that are geared towards making gas cars. They've got to make this transition. It's going to be very, very difficult for them. So I think what we're going to end up with is, I don't know, they're going to have to feed all the gas cars to certain places, and then they're going to have to feed all the EVs to certain places. So like the European Union has tighter regulations, so a lot more of the EVs are going to be heading to Europe. And in North America, with, especially in the US, with the deregulation, more of the gas cars and the diesel cars are going to go to America. So I don't know. You're going to be pitched a different kind of car depending on where you live. That's my theory.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm disappointed the sticker prices aren't coming down faster than they are, because it seems to me that, another thing is the Chevy Bolt, Chevy Bolt with a B, the 100% battery electric car, which doesn't look as great as it should, but it is highly regarded in the electric car community as being
it's a decent car. Yep.
Very decent car. And the problem with it was the seats. And they were going to improve those seats for the new model year. That's been pushed back. So, and the thing about that is that Chevy has dealerships, and they've been committed to electric cars for about 10 years now, because they had the Volt, which was sort of a hybrid, I guess, plug-in hybrid with a backup gas engine. But so the infrastructure's there. The dealers aren't new to it. They have some understanding and acceptance of it, and they permeate every single market pretty much.
But again, my theory is like the differentiation is going to continue, because so you have people complaining, oh, I walked into my, Chevy dealer and they didn't have any Bolts, or they don't want to sell me one, and that's just going to continue. I think it's like, California's got regulations. They're going to get the electric cars. Europe's got the regulations. They're going to get the electric ones, but it's to their benefit to keep this differentiation going. And, because they've got all these gas cars they're going to need to sell.
I can see the wind bouncing on my volume meter of my recording software. It's very windy today, and I'm sorry I can't do anything about it. I'm not in a bomb shelter like some people. Yeah,
no, it is the weather is still ugly. It's a bit warmer, but it's ugly with the wind.
Yeah, so I don't know. The one car company that does have it right is Tesla. And last week, you want choice, though. You want different. You don't want everyone to be driving the same car. And Teslas are premium cars, so they're more expensive, and they're going to be that way because you get a lot more with them. Anyway, last week, Brian, we were talking about Sentry mode, which is the mode that uses its 8 cameras. Is it 8 that it has around the vehicle?
Yes, there's 8 cameras. I'm not sure if it records all of them for Sentry mode, but yeah.
It records a number of them. So basically, you can have one in the rear, one on the sides, and one on the front at least. And so if a perp comes up to your car and you can see them approaching and you have different angles of it somehow. But anyway, we were talking last week about you have to record it on a USB stick and then take that into the house if it tells you that there's been activity or events, right?
Yeah, like you come into your car in the morning, it'll say there was 2 events for Sentry mode. But in order to look at the footage, you had to remove the USB drive and look at it on a phone or a computer. But then
now there's a software
right after
update.
I think even later that day after we recorded that episode, they released a software update, and this can be looked at in the car now.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, and
it saves you
really
the time.
necessary for it to be a useful feature. It really had to have that.
But have you got that software update yet? It
No, I don't.
The same people all the
Yeah,
time,
I'm still kind of learning how they dole out the updates, but no, that update is not yet available to me. It sounds like they parcel them out in different sections. So, it's an update I will get eventually, but I don't have it now.
So we're 2 weeks into you having a Model 3, your first electric car.
Yep.
You get into it. How do you feel?
Feels great. And actually, you were talking about seats. I did want to mention that. The seats in the Model 3 are really, really comfortable. It really feels like the most comfortable seats I've ever sat in a car.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really great. Like, it just always feels great being in the car. Stereo is really good. I wouldn't say it's excellent. I have the standard range plus, so it's not the top end stereo. Mm-hmm. So I would say it's very good. But that's great. Yeah, turn up the music nice and loud is a lot of fun. The range really does drop a lot in our cold weather. I was doing a lot of driving around one day and there was one day I didn't plug it in. Like, you're really supposed to, you should plug it in every night so you have a full charge.
Especially in cold weather.
Especially in cold weather. There was one day I didn't do that and then did a bunch of driving around, and I was actually a little bit worried about the range.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it ended up down at about 60 kilometers by the time I was done the day.
60 kilometers? That's like the full range of my Leaf, for God's sake, and you're worried about that.
But it's because, like, I wasn't worried. It's like, oh, this car's got lots of range. I never thought about it, and I was, like, continually warming it up all day. Like,
As you should.
Yeah, you want to preheat the cabin before you leave. But I ended up, like, preheating it, like, 3 times, and I was waiting at the grocery store for half an hour watching a Jackie Chan movie while my partner was in shopping. So we were doing all these things that were just very kind of energy intensive just by accident.
It's perfect for the COVID pandemic, because you can watch a Jackie Chan movie in the parking lot of the grocery store while your partner shops and is exposed to virus loads.
Exactly. No, that was a wonderful perk to be able to put on the Netflix.
Otherwise, you're sitting there like an idiot. You can't go in.
Exactly.
You're not supposed to have multiple people go in. So, yeah, that's very interesting. The preheating will use a lot. So it has to be plugged in if you're preheating, I think. It's you want to take it off the grid. But you'll get used to that.
Yeah.
And I think in the summertime, you'll never even think about it.
For sure. And of course, this is one of the things they're learning as they're tearing down the Model Y, is that it has a heat pump heater rather than a resistive heater. So no one's done the math yet, really, but it sounds like this is going to be a much more efficient way to heat the car. So the Model Y is not going to lose as much range in the winter.
Yeah, and especially in weather like this. I mean, our really cold parts of the winter, below minus 15, it'll probably not be that effective at all. But in this kind of, flirting with freezing type of weather, it'll be perfect.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen how quickly the heat pump can heat up. So the nice thing about a resistive heater is that, the heat is pretty much instant, like a hairdryer.
Right.
But the heat pump might have to kind of spool up and, so I'm looking forward to seeing some tests and see how that works, how quickly it'll heat up. But that's kind of, what I'd like to do in my house as well. Like, I'd like to get rid of the gas furnace in my house. And, you can buy an electric furnace that just works as a resistive heater. And, you can heat up your house really quickly with an electric furnace. But of course, again, it just uses tons of energy. So yeah, in a climate like ours, I think the ideal, if you're heating your house with electricity, is to have a heat pump to heat it on days when it's like minus 20 or above. And then when it gets to minus 40, kick in the resistive heater for that little extra push.
Yeah, and it will work better in a highly insulated house. You look
Yes.
at these people who are building modern passive solar houses where the heat pump will work fine, and then a couple of days a year they turn on the resistive heater for a couple of hours that basically are like just run off the wall, like just baseboard plug-in heaters
Yeah.
as a backup on the real.
But yeah, having a really insulated house is always the first step.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a lot of data on it. And when there is data, they're never in climates quite like the brutal cold that we get here in Saskatchewan winters.
Yeah, exactly. We're definitely the outliers in terms of temperature for sure.
So I think it'd be kind of risky right now.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to further teardowns on the Model Y to find out how the whole mechanism works. It sounds like they've integrated all the heating and cooling systems into one unit.
And again, for anyone who's a novice, the Tesla Model Y is the brand new small SUV from Tesla, which was just starting to get delivered to people. In the Leaf, the modern Leafs, or actually, I think even in my model year Leaf, if you got the higher trim level, you got a heat pump, but you still had the resistive heater in there as well.
Okay.
So I assume that Tesla will do the same thing.
Yeah, and Tesla also, they released their Q1 sales figures, and it was a really strong quarter. They weren't really hit at all by the pandemic, but of course that came at the very end of the quarter. So it's the next one, Q2 for Tesla, that's probably going to be ugly, like it's going to be for most car manufacturers, I think.
I think so too, and I'm really sick of watching car commercials on TV saying, Cadillac is behind you through this difficult time.
Yeah,
please don't forget
bizarre
to spend all your money on a Cadillac when this is over.
And just continuing on the top of cars, so I don't post a lot on Twitter, but I've been really annoyed we've got this new bypass in our city that cost $2 billion to build, and some of the signage is kind of poor. So there's this one sign in particular that I thought was unclear, just the way they did the graphics. Like, it's a turnoff from one city to the other city. Like, you turn left to Saskatoon, you turn right to Regina, but they just did it wrong. Like the way they placed the text and the way they placed the arrows on the sign, it was confusing. So I took a picture of it and posted it on Twitter to see, and put up a poll to see if people could actually decipher the sign and pick the right choice for if you want to go to Regina. Is it a left turn or a right turn? And 80% chose the right one and 20% chose the wrong one. So I passed that along to the authorities. That be a little bit of kind of driver activism there for me. I'm hoping they change that sign, because it was ridiculous. It didn't make sense.
Yes, it is ridiculous when you're going to highway speeds and trying to decipher if you should go left or right, and it's just not clear. And in fact, their highway signs were so bad on that, when it first opened, there were semis going the wrong way.
Exactly,
freeway, which is never good. But because no one uses the damn bypass for $2.2 billion, it didn't matter.
It didn't matter, yeah. Yeah, it's
some
weird.
Interesting internet video, though.
I just assumed that there was some kind of master playbook out there that, if we've all been designing highway signs for 100 years now, there must be some master playbook for how to do it.
Do you know what it is? It's a private-public partnership, a P3, as they call them. So they hired this company in Europe to make it. And the problem with the sign is that it's too small, that they tried to cram everything in on a small sign and save $75 on the damn sign.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was too, that the sign is just physically too small, and that left them, fewer options with how to lay it out.
Yeah, it's just stupidity, and people will die so they can save a few bucks, literally.
But again, isn't there a playbook somewhere? It's like, okay, you've got a highway,
Yes.
The speed is 110 kilometers an hour. If you're going to have this type of sign, it's got to be so big. Like, obviously someone's figured this out already, right?
Yeah, there is a basic standards. I don't know if it's in law, but there are standards, and maybe it's more specific in the States. I don't know.
Yeah, go figure. But all the signs seem slightly off, and some of them just seem wrong.
Brian, I don't have a lot to talk about, and I think it's going to be a shorter show this week. No, it's not. We're already
No, it's not.
blabbed on for 47 minutes or so. There just hasn't been a lot of clean energy news to talk about. Nothing positive. It's all been as depressing as this damn pandemic.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
So when you were down to 60 kilometers range, you should have went to the supercharger. It was a perfect time to go to the supercharger.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about it. Yeah,
only for a few minutes just to see what your charge rate was, because the batteries in cars, and particularly the Tesla, charges a lot faster below 50%, which is why your trip planner there had you only charging for 7 minutes, 11 minutes, and on a slightly more frequent basis, because
the battery was operating in the fastest charging area.
And for people who don't know, once you hit 80%, it gets really slow, and people generally don't fast charge their vehicles past 80% because
highway trips, you're keeping it between 20 and 80 typically. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good luck with your quarantine. I don't know what to say. It's just we'll be back next week, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get on your bike a little bit more. The weather's, not so terrible.
Should be better. It's 12 degrees below normal. I'll just point that out. Thank you, God.
Yeah, it's going to, flip one of these days soon. It's going to be real nice.
Oh, sure. Well, you're a glass full person. You're an optimist. But when it comes to weather, you can't be optimistic. You can't.
Well,
it's a fool's errand to be optimistic about weather.
We'll see next week.
Okay. We'll see you then, Brian. Bye for now, everyone.
Take care.